I was just at PAX West where I saw this brand new starter set being used at table after table after table. Let's look inside the set and I'll share with you how it went in actual play. So starter sets are a really interesting thing. I mean, we've got classics like, this basic red box set that is so well known. And you might think, well, given all of its fame, that's what this starter set's going to be like. But a lot of other starter sets have tried to be the red box. And in this case, our starter set is going to be a little bit more like this guy. The basic game that came off for 3rd edition, which provided you with a number of different features like you could put down play mats or really like tiles that were maps, and you had miniatures and things like that. And it was trying to break down the game a little more simply. And in this new set, in the Heroes of the Borderlands, we're going to take a look and see how they give us brand new components, a new approach to the components to try to do something that I've been advocating for quite some time. And I'm really excited for you to see how they do it. This is a great set. I'll go ahead and say that I'm very positive about this set, and let's see why. So here we have it, the new starter set for D&D. Lots of questions as to what it can do in play. I am going to answer those because I've now heard from folks who've seen it at a previous convention, and myself have seen this starter set used countless times, dozens and dozens of times, being run for brand new players, casual players, and experienced players at the PAX West convention. It is a big box. This is a hefty box. Like, it's good. I could almost do a workout with this box. And it is a neat box, very visually attractive. I think it's like 50 or 60 bucks. I have to check the price tag. I'll put it on the video once I figure it out. What I'm looking at here is, as a new purchaser, would I be able to follow things? And as I mentioned, there's that QR code so you can get more information, quick start video. It tells you what's in the box and what's for everybody versus what's for the DM. It introduces things, describes what D&D is, shows you everything that you kind of should lay out and what you should do with it to get set up, that there's this rules glossary in the playbook. You get information on what's nice is this is not just written for the dungeon master, it's written for the group. And so one of the first things you're going to do is decide, hey, do I want to be the dungeon master or play a character? And how do I get started? And it walks you through all that as a player versus as the dungeon master, what you're going to do. And it gives you a nice visual here of what the components look like, so that if you hear or read a reference as to the rules or different component parts, you'll know what they are. So that's really nice. The play guide is very well written, really quite nicely done. It even mentions that this is based off of the original Keep on the Borderlands adventure in terms of the adventure content you'll see. Background cards and species cards, breaks down what the boards are like, all with a nice numbered system to explain each part of it very carefully. Monster cards are broken down, right? All of this. And I'm not going to go through all of this. Flip-throughs are actually not allowed, but you then get into how to play. And this is essentially the free rules, if you're familiar with those, or if you want to go check those out on D&D Beyond. It's like the free rules, but they do make a few changes to talk about the play boards that you're using and to refer to specifics that are only in this box set versus the normal rules of D&D. It's kept to a minimum. It's done pretty well. So for example, you'll see here, compare the total to a target number. And over here, it's going to reference which appears on class boards and monster cards, right? So the text has been modified from what you find in the free rules to talk about the actual components here because they're a little bit different. And we'll see that when we do things. So for example, marking hit points, you're going to use tokens rather than write it on a character sheet. So some of these rules will refer to that. There are a nice example of play sections here that look a lot like the Player's Handbook or Dungeon Master's Guide to help you understand things. And there's a rules glossary, very similar to the normal rules glossary, but every now and then it'll have a reference to, your class board or monster card or something of that nature to reflect the set again. So overall, this play guide, pretty neat. You can see it's got a decent number of pages because it's got that whole rules glossary, so 30 pages. It's a nice quality book, pretty well done. And then what we're going to see is some adventure booklets that are for the different kinds of areas that you can adventure, which is the wilderness, the Keep on the Borderlands,
and the Caves of Chaos. And all three of these provide slightly different experiences. This is meant Wilderness as more of an introduction to start in. It's got a sort of tutorial encounter in it that really helps you get your grounding, get your feet under you to feel good about running things. They then recommend Keep on the Borderlands as the second one, has more of a town experience and gives you various quests that lead you to the third, Caves of Chaos. And we also see what is of huge interest to everybody, these class boards. And they're pretty neat. You get 4 of them for 4 different classes. They are double-sided with level 2 on the back. And when you get to level 3, they're 2-sided for that third level.
I want to go back and add something important that I didn't see in my first look. So these level 3 sheets, the playmats, they are not actually 2-sided in terms of choices. They are 2-sided in that you get to choose your subclass, which is actually really cool. So apologies for getting that wrong during the video when I recorded the first time. So for example, you can be a level 3 fighter with the subclass Eldritch Knight, or on the other side is subclass Champion. And the playmat walks you through that. So for example, when you're doing the level 3 fighter who is a champion, you will get your normal second wind tokens over here, but you will also get a action surge over here, and then talks about improved critical and your remarkable athlete advantage. So it sets you up for that. If you are using the Eldritch Knight, then you get a space for spellcasting tokens. So that's pretty neat. I like that. And this is true of all of the boards. The Cleric lets you choose between the life domain on one side and the light domain on the other side. That's where I looked at it and I thought it was the same thing, but that's different. So it gives you different options. Your channel divinity is spelled out for you, and you use tokens to track that. You get extra spell tokens for your power cards, or extra power tokens for your spell cards because you have additional spells. You have like a warding flare feature that gets some tokens. So that's nicely kitted out on this, how to track your level 3 features. The wizard chooses between being an abjurer and being an evoker. And the rogue at level 3 gets to choose between an assassin and a thief. And interestingly, we get here 2 equipment slots that you can choose if you want to have a main hand and an offhand weapon. And it recommends short sword and dagger as your defaults there. I thought that was pretty cool. Nicely done there. Good way to use that. So you are choosing one of the sides. It also means that if you were doing that recommendation where you could swap play, you could say, well, okay, when the current DM swaps to a character, they could try out the other subclass and see how it works so everybody gets to see it. That's pretty cool.
When you try to cram everything onto one, say, 8.5 by 11 size paper or board, it's hard. It's really, really hard to do well and to have it visually meaningful. So for example, you can see here with ability scores, they didn't write whether this is a 14. They just gave you the +2 bonus, right? Could even be a 15, I don't know, but it's not given to you because you know what's important for a new player? Knowing to roll +2 on your strength save, on your athletics, or a strength ability check. So that's the kind of thing that this board's doing. Each one in the bottom left corner has a what you need to play section. And this tells you which cards to equip when you choose to play that particular class, the number of gold tokens that you get, and spell cards if you get any. So in this case, it's a really neat system. What you can see is this playboard has different spaces that you can put tokens or cards on, in addition to ones that are just standard and essentially stay largely unchanged. So we can see that by default, in my attack section, I get what I'm going to roll to hit, and there's a die icon. Very cool, right? So that's what I'm going to do with melee or ranged as my default. Now, there is no damage here because I have to be holding something, which is a little interesting, but it doesn't give us our unarmed strike default. Instead, we're going to have our starting card of mace. So you will put the mace equipment card here, and that tells you what to do. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's take the mace and let's put it on top. So you go through, the equipment is sorted alphabetically. When I add it, now it tells me what my damage is, which is this D6, again, a little die icon, plus my strength, which I can get from plus there, right? But my attack rolls stay the same in this case because it's not magical. For a magical, we would get, some more information here. Pretty neat. The mace, if I flip it over, just tells me a little bit about it, including the weapon mastery if I am able to use it. And then similarly, my chain shirt, my default armor class is 9. It can tell me what kind of armor I can wear. And interestingly, it says you can use a shield, but you can't cast spells while you're holding one. And Justice Armand, who's the lead designer for this, explained, hey, yeah, some clerics, they're set up so that they can, put their holy symbol in their shield. Not this one. And that's fine. It's just trying to do whatever you can. You cannot get a starter set to be like this and perfectly cover all the complexities. So in this case, you don't use a shield and cast spells, and so it goes. Chain shirt, we can see here it tells us what our armor class is. Instead of the default of 9, it's now 13 plus my dexterity, max of 2. And so that's where I can look at my dexterity, which is -1. So now we can get that I've got a 12 armor class. Hey, better than 9. And it gives us some rules for concentrating on spell, our spell attack rolls and spell save DC. Things about resting and how that works. And you can see it refers to power tokens and hit point tokens. We get a little bit about playing a cleric. I think some folks have said that Guiding Bolt is not really an example of defending your party member, but that's okay. Encouraging people to use the big rewarding spell like Guiding Bolt is something I always do with new players and new clerics, so that's fine. It has some recommendations as to your origin cards, which you're going to put a species card on the side here and a background card on the side here next to your playmat so that you'll see those, and those will modify things a bit. And then they use a clever technique, which is to have power tokens here. We'll see those in a bit. They're little like sunburst looking cardboard chits. You put those down on here, and when you cast something other than a cantrip, you take it off, and now you've used it. This system is something that Sean Merwin and I have been talking about on Mastering Dungeons for quite some time, and I think I've talked on forums long before that I've often thought that when you're setting up convention games, something like this, like a character sheet with one little piece that you could put on top that's like your background or your choice of weapon, right? Like if you're a fighter, do you want to be 2-weapon or do you want to be sword and board where you shield and sword? That could be a really neat way to just do a pre-gen and just put, one little card that covers up. And that's exactly what this is doing. It's a really neat system, very fun idea to cover these up like this. And then during play, you could possibly get more. And it drives home that message of, hey, you can enhance your character changing these things out. Pretty cool. So you can see that there is a 3rd level cleric here. And as I said before, it's double-sided, so you can see both sides of it. Then we get the fighter, which is the 2nd class. This one, interestingly, uses tokens for the 2nd wind ability instead of for any spell casting, but otherwise is a very similar situation. You can see it has the starting gear, all of the different information here. It's going to start with a great sword and chainmail, so it is not using a shield in this case, but it tells you some information in case you wanted to do that. Gives you those kinds of tips on how to run your fighter. Level 2 is on the back. I don't know if I mentioned that for the cleric, but that's kind of nice. You can just flip it over when you gain a level. There is no discussion here of XP. It really is that when you do a certain number of scenarios, it says, okay, when you've done this much, then you can get to your next level. We got the level 3 fighter, level 1 wizard, and level 2 is on the back. And you can see, the types of spells that they get. Pretty fun mix. The level 3 wizard, and of course level 3s, they all have subclasses. So in this case, we can see Abjurer. The fighter was the champion, no surprise there. And the cleric is the life domain. Makes sense. Level 1 rogue, you can see that's our 4th character class. So it's cleric, fighter, wizard, rogue. And you get all of your rogue information here. Level 2 on the back. And level 3 is going to be the assassin. Not very shocking. So when I look at these cards, and I've not just looked at them, I've seen players spend hours on these. And overall, it works really well. I'll add some pictures of people playing with the new sets from the recent PAX convention. Folks really enjoyed them. They found it very easy to use. I'd say this has absolutely met its goals in play of being cool. Even players who are casual, meaning they've played D&D before but don't have like a current campaign or have trouble finding a group, but they know the rules already, they liked this set and wanted to buy it as a way to introduce their friends to it. So that is success upon success. Really great to see. Then we had players who were existing and for some reason would say like, I just want to play a 30-minute game of D&D, or it's been a bit since I played. And they also enjoyed this set, even if they might not be the demographic that this starter set is really intended for. It was rewarding to them and enjoyable to play using this set. Now, I have two kind of mild critiques of what we've seen so far. One is four being the max. I would have loved 5. I know that makes everything more expensive, but something that was, still a simple class to play that doesn't need too many components so that the cost could stay fairly low. Maybe even a 5th sheet that you could download, right? Like maybe that's an encouragement for using the QR code. Scan the QR code and get a 5th playmat that you can print out. Something like that, because at least at PAX, we had to run tables of 4 players, and we had a lot of players who wanted to try, and we couldn't do it, right? I had initially thought there were extra versions of these, but no, you just get one of each at level 1. So you can't have people play 2 rogues unless you buy 2 sets, right? So that's the kind of thing that would have been nice of just that 5th class. It's so easy to have 5 or more players, but at least 5 would get you closer. That's my first critique. The second thing is there isn't a lot here that talks about what to do after level 3. If at some point you want to switch to using a normal character sheet, or have to because you've reached level 4, nothing that I've seen so far indicates what to do. Maybe I'll find something as I'm looking with more detail here, but because I was focused on our running these for level 1 at level 1 at the cons, but it would be nice if something helped you. Hey, you're going to now use a character sheet. Here's what that looks like, and here's how to make that transition. Nothing really says that. Or does something tell us what to play next now that we're level 4 heroes, which is something that the first starter set did fairly well. A lot of adventures after the first starter set for 5e 2014 helped us transition to specific adventures, and that was pretty cool. So next we can see a map of the keep of the Borderlands, the actual keep. I'm not going to show you everything because I'm going to try to avoid spoilers. We get a wilderness map, and the style of art is really good. It's really nice. Or this is actually the fens, which is part of the wilderness map. And so one thing that you'll see is you'll have some maps of the general areas, right? The keep on the Borderlands, the Caves of Chaos, the wilderness area, and then you'll have kind of zoom in areas where the wilderness section will say, here's the big wilderness map, but now, go to the fens. Or here is a particular cave within the Caves of Chaos, right? So that's kind of neat. The trail map, for example, was used heavily in the intros. It's one of the first one you'll use. I'll show that because it's not much of a spoiler. The spoiler is in the adventure itself. And it's just a nice trail map. And a lot of these maps are really useful, particularly for new DMs, but kind of for everybody, where they're cool. They have a lot of utility, right? I mean, I think there's a famous map called the King's Road that was available for 4th edition and late 3rd edition. And I've used that map a million times to be the trail that you are on when something attacks, right? And this similarly can fit that bill. It's a map you can use over and over again and have fun with. The maps are double-sided, so you see there's a wood section there. Again, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers. The quality is fairly good. It's thin but good paper, not bad at all. And you get here's the Caves of Chaos, the sort of outer zoom map, and then an example of cave map A that you can use to in one of the adventures. And the adventure books will refer to them. So when you're running the Caves of Chaos, one of them will say, oh, if you do this particular layer, go to map or page 4 and map A, and that's the map you use, right? So very cool system. So there are a bunch of these. Lots of good maps. And again, they're double-sided. So Cave C is on one side, and Cave F on this side, and then G on the other, right? So very useful. I'll just show you quickly the general wilderness map is a nice example. So these are the different areas that are in the wilderness, right? The woods, you can see the keep over there, the trail. So it's a nice way to use it. And then on the, there's the fens that we saw. And so those are different areas that you can explore when you're doing the wilderness book. And then you have the keep itself, which is kind of neat. So here you can see all the maps, really nice. It feels high quality. It feels like it could be a Beatles and Grimm's type set, right? They've certainly learned from that. Justice worked there, so I'm sure he knew, what kind of things have really worked with players. And then we get tokens. And so you get a number of tokens of various sizes, and including on the back. So you can see they're double-sided. And then you have things like standee bases, and we'll see those getting used later. So more monster tokens. And these are all used in the various adventures. Very cool. We have gold piece tokens. Here are those power tokens they were talking about. So you're going to put these little orbs next to the classes that use them, such as our cleric. You're going to punch these out and put them on there to represent the 2 spells you can cast. And similarly, you're going to look at the hit point totals. If it says 8 hit points, you are then going to use your hit point tokens and give those out. We also have some gem tokens that can be used as treasure. Here are the player card tokens. So there are essentially 2 sort of different looks for each of the class or each of the species that are available. So you can, choose whichever one you want, and they go into these little standees. There are traps and treasures and other things, the spider webs that reflect the adventures. Very cool, wagon. Nice use of those tokens there. And then, is it? No, it's not. There's more. Well, after you get through the cardboard. Here we go, handouts. So you have various handouts, which I won't show all of them, but they're really for the keep. And they represent things like meals or special services that you have that you can offer. So it's sort of posters that they'll find. I must have put these back in upside down. So there's some letters, there's, the provisioner, menu at a bar, things that are going to make that voyage to the keep on the Borderlands really fun. So we're getting towards the bottom of the box, but we're not done. You get these plastic bags, which are a nice inclusion because the point of this is that when you're playing your cleric and you've got, your mace and your chain shirt and your hit points and your power tokens and maybe you got some treasure, well, at the end of a game, you can put them all in your one bag and say, that's my cleric bag. I got all this stuff there. So that was nice thinking, right? Give you 4 little bags that you can put the various things for your characters in to keep the characters together is the point of these bags, which is really smart. And, honestly, I kind of missed that even when we were setting up the tables at PAX because we could have used that to quickly build the sets back up. And, well, we missed that. So don't miss that. That's a really nice way to do it. It does say that's what it's for. We get some very reasonably cool dice, nice colors. See the translucent color. We have a little protective insert, and then we get to these combat trackers that are kind of cool. So you can track initiative, who's fighting, their hit points, conditions. So you can use these for your monsters, for characters to track your initiative, and you get a whole pad of those. Very nice. You get some on your turn combat summaries. So you can give this to each character so they know what actions they can take and what can they do on their turn. So now we're going to get to some of the really nice touches that really make this set shine even more so. We have a bunch of cards of various types. And these cards are pretty neat. So you have NPCs that are meant to bring them to life. They have information on the back that are primarily meant for the DM. But that's really neat. You have a whole bunch of these individual NPCs that you can use that are in the adventure. You have equipment, which it can be things you buy, it can be things you start with, it can be different rewards of things that you'll find. But it's very neat. Different characters have different items to begin with, and then there's additional gear that you can find when you're in the adventures. Each card, as I mentioned before, has information on the back as to what they do. They're initially in alphabetical order, so they tell you to not shuffle them because it's easier to find things when you're working off the initial deck the way it's packaged. We also have these cards with the bottom trim being in yellow. These are going to be in your species card over here, and you get to choose whichever one you want. Nice pictures on here. The art, a lot of the art is brand new, which is really, really sweet. They, I think, wanted a really consistent look. And so being able to choose those is pretty neat. And you can choose, sort of genders and which one you want and put it down there. And that does mean that you could have 2 dwarfs at the table if you want, which is cool. And you see what benefits you might get. That can include putting power tokens on there to track it. Pretty cool. So in the same way that you choose your species card, you're going to choose your background card. And so we get a bunch of different cards. These use the art that's found in the player's handbook. And on the back tell you what benefit you get, right? If you're a soldier, what you can do. It's pretty neat. Sometimes they have little tracking areas for tokens or other information like that. And so you're going to make a choice as to what you want, and you're going to put that down in your background slot. So the idea is that you have 2 cards next to your play area. And you would, that's sort of what the board would look like when it's in play. Pretty cool. So we get all of those cards, and then we have spell cards. So we get a ton of blue spell cards that are really cool. Again, these start in alphabetical order, so you want to not shuffle them up until you've used them and play a bunch of times. And you will have the bottom of the card that tells you what spells they get, and so you can look up that spell and then assign it. On the back, it tells you exactly what it does, what level spell it does, and just some information up on the front that's neat. And so you set those over to the side. You can we would stack them over on the side when we were running games at PAX. But it's great. Yeah, lots of neat spells in here, all using the 5e rules, and very nice list of spells. We found that using the spell cards was pretty good. It was a tangible way of reminding players of, hey, here's the thing your cleric can do, or here's the thing that your wizard can do, which when it's on a character sheet, like just a printed black and white character sheet, I've found with new players, it's very hard to get them to use their spells. You need something either on a pre-gen one-page sheet or something like these cards to really help players go like, right, I have this thing, I can use this thing, right? I've got this spell in front of me. I need to cast that when someone's hurt, right? Or I need to use this spell to attack. It really helps because otherwise it's the mace that shines, right? This is the thing they see in that attack section on their character sheet, if you're using a typical character sheet. But when you have a bunch of spells along the side of your cleric sheet, the cleric remembers that it's not just about the mace. So I love these cards, really fun. And then the last thing is you have in purple various magic items that you can get. And so, as we said before, it gives you different information as to what it does. And so you get to see all the things that you can get. Very neat. We are down to one last stack, and it is a really good stack because the art on these is really, really great. I absolutely love it. It's one of those things that, just like the maps that we talked about, the art that is on these monster cards makes them useful to use them again and again with mixing your own adventures. And if you think of this set from the perspective of a new or casual player who wants to bring friends up to speed and have them be really excited about it, this is the kind of thing that pays dividends, right? Same as these maps. You can use these maps as any kind of cool cave for adventures you're creating. Well, you can also use these monster cards as almost your mini monster manual. Has a really nice art on the front, and then has the full stats on the back, including a little bit of lore, right? Really, really cool. And I don't want to spoil all of it, but as you look through, this art is fantastic. Let me show you a few of my favorites. So you can see here the zombie, the ogre, the Minotaur of Baphomet, the cultist, even the commoner, right? Really neat art. Nothic, the curate, like really cool. And that art just really makes it awesome to run, right? Because you can get those new players and say to them, here's this amazing creature. You're showing it to them, but on the back, you're looking at the stats. Super cool way to do it, right? Love it, love it, love it. And then you've got tokens that are in here that match these different kinds of monsters. But as I said, it's like a miniature monster manual. You can just take that deck, build your own little encounters, have fun playing in the caves, and run people through different adventures, right? It extends the life of this. Afterwards, when you get the actual player's handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide and you figure out the rules for encounter building and all that, you can still use these components to bolster your experiences, and you can still use these maps to bolster your experiences. Very cool. Love it. Absolutely. So that is a great first look at the contents of the box. And what I can say again, from seeing it in use, it is highly, highly effective at teaching the game and helping players run a smooth experience with a group of casual players. If you've wanted to try for the first time and you're watching this, if you know D&D a bit and you want to teach it to your friends who don't know it, or some of them don't know it, this is an excellent purchase to do that. And even if you're casual and your friends are casual and you've used it before, you might want it just for these components, right? Because of those neat maps and so on. If you have enough utility for the fact that it has these introductory playmats, then this may be really useful. What, of course, the playmats won't do is they're not going to level past level 3. Unless Wizards puts out another product, you will have to transition from this to a character sheet. So if you see yourself running a very long campaign and your players aren't new, or your DM is not new, then this is going to have that limited shelf life for some parts of it, right? So the ideal scenario is that you're going to be able to get some benefit from this new player experience using these cards. some benefit from maybe the DM side being new, which is really well done, and then that you're going to use all these components in your play, then that's where this becomes just an incredible value. I will say that another neat thing that's in the play guide with how it's written is that this play guide is not written as if one person becomes the DM and everybody else is a player. Its perspective is that of, hey, you probably want to take turns DMing and playing. And it tells you how to do that, how to, share the playmat with someone else who was DM last time, and talks about how you can split up, like, hey, maybe somebody wants to run the wilderness section as DM, but the next person wants to become a player, and then the next person will DM, keep on the Borderlands, right? So that's a really nice approach towards making more DMs, which we can always use in our hobby.
So I hope you enjoyed this look at the starter set. I really enjoyed this product. It's really cool. Hope you did as well. Hope you found it helpful. If you have used this, let me know how it goes. I'm very curious to hear from new players, new DMs who use this set, or who had new people at their game trying it out. Love to hear that feedback and what you might tweak about this based on your actual play experiences. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.